I want to share a little bit about what my purpose is today, and I would like you to go on the journey with me. And my goal is to provide rich images, tools, and some stories of healing for today that we can use. And since this month is about Divine Mother, in fact, the music that was playing before Jay spoke was a chant. This piece of music was given to me by my stepdaughter, and the one that was playing was, translated, says, "Salutations to the Divine Mother who brings blessings to children." And the theme today is about all of those divine mothers that can help us and can inspire us and be part of our lives by just simply inviting them and bringing them into our lives and asking them to be present. There are many, many goddesses that we can call upon to stand with the masculine. Because I grew up back in the 50s and 60s, and I was on campus when the feminist movement was around, and people would ask me if I was a feminist, and I would say no, because right now I see that the feminist is acting as if it wants to have supremacy over the masculine, and I don't agree with that. I believe we are to stand equal and share the power, because that is what I believe the divine plan is. And now I believe that it is time for the goddess to rise, for us to call upon her when we need her and want her, and that she can share with us what we need. Now, I know that part of my journey is, of course, all of those parts of me that didn't succeed in getting everything I needed in life. I would imagine some of you have had those experiences too, that yours wasn't a perfect life, right? But we're seekers, and we're working on being improved upon. And of course, I have had those moments and times and those challenges with my own mother, because she wasn't that divine mother that I thought she should be. But then, of course, she was only human. I couldn't expect everything from her. She gave me many, many gifts. She was the woman who was my Girl Scout leader for many years and introduced us as a family to camping and traveling and being in the wilderness. And so I am very grateful for those. She was a very smart and bright woman, and she was always inquisitive, and she was always signing me up for classes and things to take so I could learn. And I'm very grateful for all of those things. But I know there are many other things that she fell short on just because they were not on her arena or in her escape of things. So that is, and through my journey and my part in life, is to have found those on my own and to take that trip. One of the things that happened way back when I was in college, actually, I didn't know till just recently, actually sent me on part of my journey. And that is, sometimes when you're sitting around late at night and you're doing that solving the world's problems kind of conversation. And this riddle was put in front of us. And it was about a class that was being offered on a college campus. And the title said, "Come and be Healed." And students would sign up for it, and once they did, they would come and they would receive a date and time to show up. And when, upon arriving, they opened the door to the classroom, and in a dimly lit room was a woman sitting, an elderly woman with gray hair, a wizened woman, and she was sitting there in a rocking chair. And the students that didn't think this was a ruse would walk in and walk up to her, and she would say to them, "Come and be healed. Crawl into my lap, and you will be healed." And I'm not sure how you would respond to that. I'm still questioning how I would respond to that. I hope I would crawl into her lap. But I do know that she was met with disdain or with cynicism or with too much amazement that they walked away. But those who did crawl into her lap were healed. And I've asked my question of myself many times. Would I have been the one that with cynicism laughed and walked away, or would I be the one that crawled into her lap and to be healed? I'd like to think I would have had the courage to have done that. But it did start me on the journey of all those things I wanted to be healed in myself. And that's why I'm inviting you and all of us today to think about the goddesses that may be helpful to us, to help us complement that masculine that we might already have well developed, or even to call upon the gods, but today it's about the Divine Mother, so it's goddesses. But also to recognize that we can get strength from that which is around us. because she is always present and always near. Let me just share a prayer and join me in this as we journey together today. O great Mother, Mother of us all, oldest of the old, come to me through the labyrinth of time to help me remember the wisdom of my forebears, the eternal life-giving power of women. And to continue, goddesses of death and rebirth, Inanna, Kale, Rhiannon, Hecate, Persephone, Isis, Nut, and many I cannot pronounce, and Hinna, help me remember the truth of living on this beautiful planet. Let me not fear death, whether physical death or the little deaths of phases of my life. Teach me to accept the cycles of my life, that I may learn to release and move on without attachment. May my endings be peaceful, and my beginnings might be blessed. May my prayers and actions benefit all beings of your land and of the lands. Amen. Let's do the first song. I think this would be a perfect timing for that. So reflect on what kind of energies that the Divine Mother and the goddesses can bring to you as we listen to the song. She is here. She will wake you and shake you. She will never forsake you. She gives you the strength and power to find your way. I would like to share one of the times when I know that I was followed or I called upon the goddess. And one of my favorite goddesses, especially 30 years ago when I was in my more youthful time, was that of Armistice. She is the archaic mistress of animals and dates back, they believe, to the Paleolithic times. Her realm is the wilderness, and her concerns all extend to all the wild and untamed things. And that's what many of the goddesses are about, are the untamed places in our lives, the underworld, the areas of darkness where we must tread and where we must go. And she was the one that I know that was with me when I took my very first solo canoe trip over 20 years ago. When I decided, after wearing out everybody else that I knew to go canoeing with, and needed to figure out who I was going to go canoeing with, and came across the amazing inspiration that I wanted to go alone. That was after I actually tried to manifest my ideal canoe partner, but had such a long list that I realized it was unrealistic to expect anyone to match that. And so as I sat down with my list of all the ideal characteristics of my ideal partner, I sat down to meditate, lit the candle, and I'm there like this. And all of a sudden, the voice said inside of me, "What do you really want, Cheryl?" And that's when I said, "I want to go alone." And so it was Armistice and her skills in the wilderness that led me and guided me to take that trip. And I remember when I take a tow out to where I actually start canoeing. And I was dropped off, and there I stood as the boat went away. And I stood there, and I had everything in my canoe. And I'm sitting there going, okay, now I have to get in and paddle. And I stood there. And I'm starting to think about the fact I could probably stay on that island and not even leave the island and make up enough stories. I'd canoed long enough that I could actually make it pretty believable that I had actually left that island. But I decided that I really needed to go. But what really spurred me on is when I heard another boat motor coming along, and I thought maybe another tow was coming out, and that group would come in, drop their stuff, load their canoe, and take off, and I'd still be standing there. So I needed to call upon a strong, powerful woman, a goddess who knew the outdoors and felt at peace and comfort in that area, and knew she could match any of the weather and any of the elements that would come. And she was the one that did deliver me to my very first night, some 20 miles away, which I still can't believe I did that very first day, because I had 4 long portages and those 20 miles to canoe. And that was actually 1/3 of my canoe trip already. But I didn't know it, but there was a divine plan already being unfolding, and that was to get me there and to take me to a certain lake called Emerald, which is a very favorite lake that I love in Quetico, which is just the Canadian side of the Boundary Waters. And she deposited me there. She helped unfold the trip in such a way that my first small portage, there was 2 men with their young sons canoeing, and they were coming the other direction. They picked up my gear and portaged it for me. I thought, wow, this is pretty easy. The next one was a longer one, and it had a very mucky start to it, and you had to get out on these boards and planks. And as I was pulling my stuff up, this young couple come from the other direction. They deposited their gear, and they looked around and said, "What can we carry for you? We're just going back to get more stuff." So they carried my pack, so all I had to carry myself was my canoe. And that was the first time I had portaged a solo canoe by myself, so I was grateful that somebody else did that. And then each trip just kept, each portage, each travel, every way I went was just perfectly open, so that when I actually got to Lake Emerald, a strange thing did happen. And that is that as I put my canoe down, I looked up, and there was a loon, and I could see it was looking over to out of the distance where I could not see the other loon, but its partner was there. And it turned and looked at me. And of course I could have been a little dehydrated, and I could have been a little bit, spacey at that time. But I do know that it said, "We have been waiting for you, and we are glad you are here." And they were sitting just off the island, the point of land where there was a campsite that I knew it was there, and I was sure hoping would be open because I needed that place. I was so tired. And sure enough, it was there. The next morning, after sleeping soundly, I actually was awakened with a vision of a Native American spirit guide, who said, "I am here to take you on your journey." Little did I know at that time that that was the beginning of my healing journey, to heal myself, but also to prepare myself as a healer. And he led me around that lake that day, and then he slowly drifted away and said, "We will meet again tomorrow." And it was that time that I needed to transfer to another place. And it was actually 2 days later where I had my moment of falling apart. And that was when I was not living up to my expectations as a canoeist. I expected to be up every morning at 8 o'clock canoeing in the early morning. Instead, I was in bed sleeping because I was too tired and too sore. And I would get out about 1 o'clock in the afternoon and then canoe into the evening. And I was going, this is not the vision I had for myself in my canoe trip. And I actually had to sit. Or when I came up to my campsite that night, I really was bemoaning that I didn't have somebody there to cook my meal and to hang my hammock and to set up my tent for me. I had to do it all myself. So I realized I needed to have a conversation with myself. And that's when Kuan Yin showed up. I didn't even know who she was at that time, but she is a Chinese goddess. And she's revered throughout Asia. And her name means she who listens to the sounds of the world. And in parentheses, it says suffering. And I think that was very fitting because I was extremely suffering at that moment. My arms were tired, my shoulders were tired. I had probably not had enough water to drink, even though there was plenty of water right there that I could just dip my cup in. She is the symbol of the unlimited compassion each of us can have for ourselves. No matter what the situation, it is possible to treat ourselves with mercy and love. And that's when she showed herself to say, you know, Cheryl, you do need to be a little more loving to yourself and kind. It doesn't really matter what time you get up to canoe. It doesn't really matter if everything goes quite as you think it should. It's the fact that you're here and you're enjoying it and you're doing something you love. And that was something that I was so grateful and thankful for that she shared with me, and she has always been present in my life since. There are many, many more goddesses, and some of them you probably have heard of them, and some I want to share that are just around from all different walks of life. Some of them are very familiar in the sense that the themes are very familiar. White Shell Woman, who is from the Native Americans. The native chant says, all things around me are restored in beauty. It is because of the White Shell Woman that this is so, and it is because of her teachings that we can experience the exquisite harmony that comes from being alive on this beautiful earth. She too also wants us to know that this is a beautiful world to be experienced, to be tasted, to use all of our senses and to feel deeply the magnificence that we have in this world. And of course, there's Mary. She comes too. We have many stories about her. She was actually derived from the Middle Eastern moon goddess that is also a creator. And that creation comes in many ways. It can come from destructive kinds of things, like we must often be taking care of getting rid of things in order to make new space and to make things happen. On my canoe trip one year, one of my canoe trips, I actually was scheduled to go out a week before I ended up going out. And in that time, after I'd scheduled the date and I was getting closer and closer to my canoe trip, I decided I didn't feel comfortable about that date. And I said, I need to change that. And so I just picked up the phone and rescheduled my date to go on my canoe trip till a week later. And that was the year that we had the huge blowdown of trees up in Canada and in the United States that took and just laid trees down like little matchsticks for a 10-mile wide swath, all for 30 miles. And the beauty of what happened after that was I got to go up and canoe in the area after, of course, the crews had all been up and cleared all of the portages so I could make the trip across the portages without having to use a little handsaw to cut down all the trees to get through, which would have taken many, many, many hours. And but what I found out when I went up there and communed with the trees and to ask what was going on, one of the things that I was given and shared was the fact that they were making space, they were making opening for something new to come through. So the destruction was necessary. As much as we think it's violent and harsh and cruel, there is beauty to the fact that it is making space for something else. And I have never yet forgotten the smell of the dying and the decay as it was starting to lose its life force. But then there was the new recognition that renewal and rebirth was about to happen too. And then several years later, the trees, the poplar trees, are like 15 feet high, and you can hardly believe that. So the growth comes quick and fast, especially up there when the seasons are so short. We have to be, making them make hay while the sun shines, so to speak. Yes. I had a little story about the side of us that is, let me just find it here. Okay, here. This is another goddess who I like very dearly because she is one that speaks of trusting one's intuition and one's abilities. In fact, many years ago, when I was leaving the job I had for 10 years in which I was delivering training and going into businesses and companies and traveling to different cities to deliver the training that I had been trained for. It was called photo reading. It's faster than speed reading. It's a wonderful way to use your mind and read much faster and more effectively. But I was leaving that and moving into working on my own. But I was sharing time with a friend whose name is Cynthia. And Cynthia and I would get together and we'd talk about the fact that we knew we were on our path. But the irony of being on our path was we couldn't see much of that path ahead of us. And she described her path as being up along the North Shore, and that she could feel and sense the water of Lake Superior to her right. And against the left side, she could feel the rock face, and that she knew she was along an edge, obviously, between the water and the rock face, and that there was a fog that was always surrounding her. And as she would move forward, the fog would just kind of float away, just far enough that she could see the next 2 or 3 steps. And that was as far as she could see, but she had to trust that she needed to just keep going and that she was in the right place doing the right thing at the right time. And well, at the time that she was doing that, she was also launching a program statewide in mental health to help individuals, especially women who were having serious challenges with mental health. And she was developing a program that was going statewide. And now that I look back, it was perfect. She had no idea where that was going to go. In fact, she wasn't even sure that the state would help her develop it and take it out into the different communities, which it did, but she also thought she might have to take that program and move it into a private practice and take it from there. But she had to trust that what was going to happen was the right thing, and all she had to do was keep working on the individual impulse, one step at a time in the darkness or in the fog. For me, I said I couldn't see anything. All I knew was that I had my feet firmly planted on the ground, and I could feel the moist, dense, rich soil beneath my feet, but I knew that I couldn't just stand there. I had to take a step. I had to take the next. And all the feedback I had was from one step to the next. And I was always given free room, free space to move ahead. And I just needed to trust that. So I look back at that and realize that actually that was preparing me for many of the pieces of the journey I've been on lately, which is that I feel like I've been in the dark, that the lights aren't there, and I must just trust and be in faith. And I know the last time I was here that I shared my parts of my cancer journey where I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And instead of choosing the traditional path of the medical approach of having a lumpectomy and then 5.5 weeks of radiation and 5 years of hormone therapy, I chose to go out and trust the divine conversation I had that said, "You are a healer. heal thyself. And that wisdom was drawn into me and through me in order to use that trust and just keep doing what I needed to do. Of course, I did a lot. I rearranged my entire life. I had to look at my own emotions and my own feelings and had to admit that I had a lot of anger and resentment I needed to heal in order to keep going. I needed to actually leave a long-term relationship and the home that I lived in for over 25 years because it wasn't serving me, it was not supporting me. My environment, our environments must support us and nurture us as well as what we do for ourselves. And there were many other kinds of things, but in that journey, I was given a lot of people that came into my space, chiropractors, nutritionists, people who had good and kind and caring words. I also wrote articles at that time to keep me honest. I figured if there was nothing better was to write about my journey, not knowing how the journey would turn out, but to trust the journey itself. And 14 months later, I was cleared of the cancer, and my life has been renewed in many ways, and I recognize how important it is to trust that the darkness and to go into the darkness and to call upon the divine women and goddesses who can help us with that. And Inanna is one of them. That was where I was going, and I got it all ready to tell that story or share it. The story of Inanna's descent tells how she, the Queen of Heaven, decides to go visit her sister, and I'm not sure I'm going to say this right, Ereshkigal. I can't even say it now. The Queen, what was that? Ereshkigal, that's right. I said it, I practiced it several times, so thank you, Dave. And the Queen of the Underworld. Inanna counsels her attendant to send help if she does not return, and she ceremonially grids herself with the accoutrements of her power, the crown, the staff, various jewels, and robe. Then she sets off alone and passes through the 7 gates of the underworld. Of course, 7 comes up very much in spiritual life. We have 7 spiritual energy centers within our own bodies, the 7 sacred sacraments that are in almost all religions. The Kabbalah, where the 7th represents the last gate before we ascend into heaven. We must give up. She must give up one of her powers at each of the gates. When she protests, she is told, "Be quiet. The ways of the underworld are perfect and may not be questioned." We may not understand them, okay? And she finally is naked as she approaches the queen of the underworld. And she fastens an eye on Inanna, the eye of death. Inanna dies and is hung from a hook. After 3 days, she is revived by spirit helpers and is reborn. Inanna's is the oldest tale we have of the journey of death and rebirth. It precedes and influences the story of Persephone, Orpheus, and Jesus by millennia. Like Inanna, Christ dies for 3 days and nights. These stories most likely are based on the fact that the moon disappears from our sight for 3 nights and of her monthly cycle. Inanna's story speaks to us of the tremendous power that can be gained from risk-taking and trusting one's own intuition. We learn of Inanna's independence, her courage, her resourcefulness, and ultimately her triumph. She is a model for all of us today who seek self-knowledge, making our own personal and collective descents into our underworld. The underworld is dark and scary, but we can use our intuition and the powers that are already invested in us to be able to take that journey. I know that I have frequently resisted it myself, but it doesn't matter how long I resisted, it's always there, and at some point we are called upon to take that journey. So I invite you to think of the many goddesses or those who can give you strength and courage along the way. A couple other goddesses that I find very powerful and wonderful is that of Ixchel. She is a Mayan goddess, moon goddess, who reigns supreme in the Yucatan Peninsula. She is called the Queen, our mother, the White Lady, the goddess of becoming. Like many moon goddesses, she is the patroness of weaving. Ixchel, like the waxing and waning moon, is comfortable with all of her sides of life. Her energy is midwife to our own creative ideas. Yes, many of the goddesses are about creation, because we as women understand that we have the cycle of life-giving and the birthing, and that we must also be patient. We cannot force the childbirth to come at its time, because we are not only part of the process, but there is a being born within us that we must let go and set off into its own journey. So we have that wisdom. The feminine wisdom is that of being able to understand there is timing that we cannot push or rush. We cannot always push the river. I've tried that too. I have canoed upstream. And one of my lessons one day when I was out canoeing on this river called Waiyag, which I think is a beautiful name, I'm not sure I pronounce it, but it zigzags like this for about 12 miles. And I was not paying much attention, and I was doing something inside my canoe, and I bumped against the shore. And it was a very small, it was probably only 12 to 15 feet wide. And I looked up startled that my canoe wasn't following the current, but had bumped up against the shore. And I thought about it, and I kind of went, whoa, I was kind of being a little pissy at the time, I would say. And I thought, well, I'm going downstream. Can't you just keep going down, canoe and all? And I don't have to paddle too much. And the inner voice said, even if you're going down in the stream, you must still navigate. And I went, I must do that. So we can't let it all be done for us. We must take the initiative. We must ask for guidance and support. We must reach out to others. We are not just individual beings, but we are people of the world in which we do things best when we are together. In fact, one of the things I'd like to share is one of the things that I became aware of when I was teaching a while, and that was that I actually had a three-phase purpose. And it was a prayer that I would always call upon when I was getting ready to be in front of an audience or to facilitate teaching. The first one was to always ask for and pray for that each person who came into that room, into that time, would have their own individual purpose met and achieved. I may never fully know what that purpose is, because I might not be able to have that time to find out and discover it, but I would always pray that it would be met. The second was for me to help that collective purpose of why we all gather in the same place at the same time with this group of people, for us, and to make sure that that collective purpose was also met. And sometimes I would have insight to that purpose, and other times I didn't. And then the third purpose was the higher purpose. It was beyond my ability to understand in my own brain or my own ability, and that was the greater, more spiritual purpose of why we've come together and why I was there and we were working together to make something greater than ourselves happen. And I remember that I'm not sure about exactly how all the timing happened, but it did occur to me, actually after that first canoe trip, in which I know that I was on a deep, powerful spiritual journey in which I was being taught about healing. And the second year, the next year when I went out, I actually was working, I went out for a day or two on that trip with the ranger from that area, and she was bemoaning about some of the challenges she was facing in her life. And so I called upon the spiritual guide that had presented himself that first time, and he came long enough to say, "You are the healer now. It's your time to do the healing." And I went, "Yes, but." "Please, but don't leave me." And he goes, "Oh, but it is your time." And I do know he has come back many a times when I've needed the counsel. But then I realized that he was infusing in me what he had shared with me on the first time that I was there. And that is that I am not alone in that time. if I am to help heal, I am to open myself up to the divine wisdom and the divine power that we can always access if we just know to do it and ask for it. And that I am to only clear out all of that which is not so perfect in the world, and to let that go so that I can be what he describes as the hollow bone, so that I can bring that divine wisdom and power in and then use it through my body as an instrument, a tool of healing. And that together we make that healing happen. That it's my physical presence and the divine presence and the need come together. That is like the Trinity, the three empowered together to make it happen. And goddesses are always present. I can feel their presence. I may not always know their names. And when one that I do call upon, when I am giving celebration and I might be gathering people together and having food and celebration of some kind. I have a great-granddaughter that's graduating from college at the end of this month, and I'm doing a celebration for her. Actually, I wasn't thinking of doing a graduation party, but my stepdaughter insisted on doing it because we're all so proud of her because she didn't have a lot of resources and tools to go to college, but she set her sight on it. She knew she wanted to go. And despite the lack of support she had from her own mother and her maternal mother, who was her maternal grandmother, who was her guardian, because they didn't have the resources to send her to college, she wanted to go, and therefore she made it there. And now she's graduating. But when I do a celebration, I always want to have Hera, the ancient goddess, who originally appeared as a wife of Zeus. But she is one that is that of the hearth, where good food and good nurturing and caring and love is present. And so she is the one that I will call upon to be there, because she is a mature, powerful goddess, combining the practicality and the nurturing, a strong image of the supremacy of the queen within. And this is what I see in the beauty of my granddaughter, as she is embarking on the next part of her journey now that she is graduating from college, and to see her grow into this beautiful young woman with courage and strength and faith that she too will make a difference and an impact in the world, and how she wants to help people in the way she wants to, which she wants to be a doctor. And she's already met her first hurdle, her first gate within Anna, I suppose you could say, because she did take the MCAT, and she didn't score high enough. So she is going to spend the rest of the summer testing and preparing for the MCAT again. And she couldn't afford the books that I hear are about $1,000 to study, but she was graced with a mentor who bought the books for her so she could study, so she did not have to spend her hours and evenings in the library using the ones that the library had. So if you have that strong intent and ability, guess what happens? The divine meets you in the face of people or in the lives of people, helping you, wanting to see you succeed because they know what it's like to not always have all the support and encouragement that they want. Yes. So I would like to just take a moment here to pause and to really just invite us to go inside and think about the things of ourselves that we are not fully fulfilled on as far as our own complement of our own being. What would you like to have greater courage in, or more strength to stand in front of or before, or to express yourself in some way? So just take a moment to close your eyes and go inside and bring your breath in. Inhale and exhale. Yes, letting go. Be inside. And what part of you may want some support or encouragement? And what might that be that will add to your strength? Maybe it's something in your creativity. Maybe it's an area of healing that you want resolved within yourself, or in your life, or in your relationships. or some other area of your life where you could use more strength, more encouragement, more intuitive access to the higher resources that are available. Think about that for a moment. What could it be? What is it? How could it be brought to you in such a way? And who might be present for you? Could it be a goddess? One that helped flesh out a part of you that is yet unfulfilled, or needs strengthening, or just needs additional wisdom, or just encouragement? You may not need to know her name. She may show you up to you with a name or an idea, a suggestion of who she is. She may stay in the ethereal realm of your inner vision, or she might be reflected or come through another being or person, or some heroine or woman that has been of good character and has been supportive of you in your past. It does not always need to stay in the realm of the goddess. She can be there in a real world place too. And just ask for that support, that guidance, that encouragement that you might need, whether it's big or small or somewhere in between. And know that if you ask and you give it back up to the universe, that it will be given in time. That is part of the creative force. That is part of the underworld, the unseen, the mysteries of life. We don't always know or don't always understand how they come to be, but it does and it can. So let it go. And when you're ready, return. Thank you. Just recently, I had one of those moments when something I could not even imagine occurred. And that was about a year and a half ago. My mother died, and it was a very trying time. There were some challenges, and there were some betrayals with my sister and my mother, and my confusion about all of what was going on and why, and I couldn't understand it all. And I'm still figuring it all out. And one of the things that needed to be done was that the house that my mother and my father lived in for years and years and years before my dad passed. My mother still lived there until she died at 93. And the house, of course, had gone under, neglect. There was lots and lots of stuff in every room and every place in the house. And it looked very insurmountable and very overwhelming to think about clearing it out. And one of the things that had happened was that I was to be the co-executor on the estate. And just weeks before my mother died, my sister had flown from Seattle to Illinois and took me off as the executor. And I only found that out on my mother's death. And so I really didn't even have the legal rights to do anything in the house. But it really came that my sister said to me, emailed me a year after my mother died and said, "It's all your fault that I have not come to take care of the house. You're being uncooperative." Now, I had a little challenge with that. And that spurred me to some inspiration, and that was to say, well, you took on the responsibility. And if you had wanted my cooperation, it might have been beneficial to have thought about that before you took the executorship away from me, the co-executorship away from me. I'm a little surprised you hadn't thought about that in the process. Well, anyway, she did start her process of getting the house cleaned, and she ended up having an auction house come in and clear out the house. And when I was back there in April, it was completely cleared out. And I was kind of sad because I did not get to go through everything and see everything and sort through it, but yet I know how overwhelming that would have been and the many, many trips it would have taken me from here to go down there. And then there was that moment of divine inspiration that said, "But Cheryl, we did it all for you. So all you have to do is grieve the loss one time. You don't have to go piece by piece, room by room, drawer by drawer." So I went, yes, thank you. Thank you. You did take care of me in a way I couldn't even see in my own way because I was too close to the situation. And so I drove home pondering about that and reminding myself whenever I would go into the sadness. And then there was the time, just actually this past week, that I opened an email from somebody, and the first part says, I bought a photo album in Urbana, Ohio. Now, I'm from Urbana, Illinois. That's where I grew up and lived. But my father was from Urbana, Ohio. And so, of course, I was intrigued. I had to open up that email, and I opened up the email, and he said, I bought this photo album of Bob, and there are no last names in here. I finally tracked down the only person whose last name was in it, Virginia Oakley. And I found her in Florida at 93 years old, and she could tell me that this belonged to Bob and Lois Hiltibran of Urbana, Ohio. And she knew me and knew that I was alive, and I still had my last name, Hiltibran. My sister's name has changed when she was married. And so then at the end of this short little paragraph is a picture of my mom and dad. And so, of course, I write back and say, yes, this is my mom and dad. Tell me more. So he goes on and tells me a little bit more, scans the entire photo album in, and says, I'm willing to send it to you for the price that I paid for it and the shipping. And I'm going, okay, well, that's pretty cool. I didn't have to sort that entire house to find a photo album that dates back to when my parents were dating. This is awesome. And I went, I didn't know I really wanted it, but I did. Because I knew there were a lot of photos and pictures and images that I didn't get to go through and see and collect. But it saved me for all the effort. And now I get the photo album for a small price. So I would say that was a very powerful, one of those unseen, hidden things that I could never have perceived, and how it's going to come out. I just have to get the check in the mail so he has it. So it's not just a check in the mail story, but a real event and gift that I get. Well, there was many other things that I love to share. I think you probably know I could talk for quite a while if I wanted to. But I would like to do just a couple more things before we wrap up here. Let's see if I can find where I mean to go next. Okay. That was our last prayer. So where did is it here? Here it is. Okay. So I want to share this. This is from the Charge of the Star Goddess. Sing, and it's to come back to the part about the goddess and the fact that it's not all about the divine mother or the divine goddess, but also the woman that is present, the feminine that is being asked to be surfaced now and to stand equal to the masculine in our world. And that the woman is very sensuous and rich, and it is encouraging us to make the most of this life, too, and the presence here. Sing, feast, make music and love, all in my presence. For I am the ecstasy of the Spirit and joy on earth. For my law is love unto all beings. I who am the beauty of the green earth and the white moon among the stars and the mysteries of the waters. I call upon your soul to rise and come unto me. For I am the soul of nature that gives life to the universe. From me all things proceed, and unto me they must return. Let me worship. Let my worship be in the heart that rejoices, for all acts of love and pleasures are my rituals. Let there be beauty and strength, power and compassion, honor and humility, mirth and reverence within you. And you who seek to know me, know that your seeking and yearning will avail you not, unless you know the mystery. For if that which you seek, you will not find within. For if that which you seek, you will not within yourself. You will find not within yourself. You will never find without. For I have been with you from the beginning, and I am that which is attained at the end of desire. And I'd like to say the last prayer before the offering. Okay. Holy Mother Ishtar, Teach me to love my body just as it is, made from your earth. I am sacred. Help me remember the pleasures of my physical being and the joys of my senses. Remind me that in the artistry of adorning myself, I celebrate your beauty. O shining one, Ishtar, teach me to worship the goddess in myself. All right, thank you very much.